Welcome to the debate. Before we dive into the main topic, please just take a moment to subscribe, turn on the notification bell, like this podcast, and leave a comment to support the channel. Your engagement, it really does help. So the subject today is pedagogical sequencing in elementary language instruction. We're specifically analyzing a curriculum that's built around the topic of shopping shop, with the pretty explicit goal of leveling up A1, A2 learners to B1 proficiency.
And that leads us to the central question, which is a complex one. Should an A1, A2 curriculum prioritize the immediate functional utility of complex real-world transactions, things like returning items or bargaining, which introduce B1 level complexity pretty early on?
Right. Or should it strictly adhere to grammatical simplicity? Things like the simple present, the verb to be, making sure that structural mastery is there before you address all those advanced functional needs. And I, as the advocate, will argue that this curriculum gets it right. We absolutely have to prioritize that functional utility to bridge the A1, A2 gap to B1 as quickly as we can.
And I have to take the opposing view. I'm going to argue for a strict adherence to foundational A1, A2 grammar first. We risk a kind of cognitive breakdown if we don't establish a robust, error-free linguistic base before throwing learners into these high-stakes B1 functions.
My position is really rooted in pragmatic necessity. The material, when you look at it, correctly identifies that true functional fluency, which is, the hallmark of B1. It requires moving beyond just simple buying. It demands immediate mastery of these higher-stakes functions. If a learner is relying on this language for survival, they need to know how to handle a broken item or understand a sale. The curriculum introduces vocabulary like refund, exchange, faulty, even promo code, and cash on delivery in its later parts. And this isn't optional. It's necessary for survival in realistic scenarios. We're just using simple grammar structures like I want a refund or it is broken as a kind of scaffolding to unlock these complex, necessary functions early on. That is how we accelerate that journey from A1 to B1.
Okay, I see why you'd think that. I really do. But let me offer a different perspective on that acceleration. The A1 and A2 stages, they're defined by the need to build a stable foundation. The material itself stresses establishing error-free grammar, focusing on the simple present, to be, to have, all the core descriptive language like big, small, or cheap, expensive. Introducing high stakes and, I would add, culturally sensitive functions like bargaining, or complex transactions like online checkouts, with words like website or add to cart, it risks severe cognitive overload. I mean, the learner is still trying to internalize the rules for something as basic as simple adjective placement. Why should we confuse them with the difference between a refund and an exchange when they haven't even mastered saying 2 apples automatically? We are, I think, setting them up for structural failure.
Because the real world doesn't wait for perfect structural mastery. Focusing exclusively on these sort of safe scenarios, like how much is this apple, completely fails to prepare a learner for essential acts like polite requests or, yes, complaints. The curriculum is clever here. It maintains an A1 grammatical constraint while expanding the functional scope. By teaching "the toy's broken, can I return it?", we equip the learner with the critical vocabulary to participate in that transaction, and that is the necessary first step toward B1 fluency. It prioritizes communicative intent over structural perfection, which I think is the right call in these early stages.
That's an interesting point, though I'd frame it differently. And this brings us right to the question of sequencing. I find the structural jump in this curriculum to be pedagogically unsound. The difference in the cognitive load between, say, Dialogue 2, buying fruit with basic price questions, and Dialogue 6, which is about returning a broken item, is just vast. Dialogue 2 is low stakes, Dialogue 6 is high stakes, often involving frustration, negotiation, and potential cultural misunderstandings. The A1, A2 core should be focused on simple requests like, can I have, please, to find an aisle or a shelf, not solve a retail dispute over faulty goods.
I'm just not convinced by that, because the material makes a really conscious effort to keep the grammatical demands simple even when the function gets complex. I mean, look at the closed shop dialogue. The phrases are, do you have this in size M, and can I try it on? These are pure A1, A2 structures, simple questions, simple modal requests, yet they immediately unlock the high utility function of closed shopping, which is essential for a B1 level speaker. If we waited until the learner mastered, I don't know, the conditional tense before they could ask to try on a shirt, they would be functionally crippled. The concepts themselves, vendor, checkout, aisle, are necessary anchors for just navigating a store, regardless of grammar complexity. Functional competency has to lead the way here.
But the functions you're citing aren't always simple requests, are they? Asking to try on clothes, fine. But the curriculum moves very quickly to bargaining, can you make it cheaper, or demanding a refund. In many cultures, these interactions require significant linguistic hedging and indirectness to remain polite. Forcing an A1 learner to handle this with only I want refund, well, you're teaching them an effective but potentially rude interaction. You're confusing functional necessity with the appropriate sociolinguistic register.
But that assumes the goal is B2 level finesse. The goal is B1 functional fluency. The structured dialogues in this curriculum, they explicitly provide simple, direct, polite templates. Excuse me, where is, please, thank you. The material is scaffolding politeness alongside that simplicity. The immediate success of getting a need met, even if you say it simply, is a massive psychological win that drives the learner forward. That's essential for that A1 to B1 level up transition.
That psychological win comes at a structural cost, and that moves us right to my second major concern, the appropriateness of all this advanced transactional vocabulary. I seriously question the ability of an A1 learner to integrate complex B1 vocabulary like warranty, promo code, or cash on delivery without the grammatical infrastructure to actually use them beyond a memorized phrase.
I just come at it from a different way. I defend the early inclusion of that vocabulary precisely because those terms are non-negotiable for effective communication in a real retail setting. It's a matter of pragmatic necessity. I mean, look at how it's organized. The curriculum groups necessary paying terms, cash, card, change, receipt, right alongside the transactional terms, return, refund, exchange, broken. For a learner trying to get to B1, they have to be able to recognize these words, at least receptively. Shielding them from these realities until they're ready just delays their functional independence. If the goal is to level up A1, A2 to B1, you can't delay the language they'll hear in their very first shopping trip.
But that strategy just overloads the learner's lexical memory. Language acquisition is about optimizing limited cognitive resources. Why should a learner dedicate precious memory to internalizing cash on delivery when they're still struggling with the correct use of the simple present for basic facts like the store opens at 9?
The focus should stay on core A1, A2 vocabulary: shop, food, clothes, buy, want, price. These are the building blocks. If we prioritize these complex, low-frequency B1 terms, the mastery of the foundational lexicon suffers. We risk creating a dictionary of nouns without the grammar to string them together. But I think that misunderstands how integrated the curriculum is. It's not asking them to learn warranty in a vacuum. It puts it into a structured dialogue in the context of buying electronics where the concept is immediately relevant. The evidence in the material shows that the foundational grammar is constantly reinforced through repetition. The core structure is there, but the context is expanded to make the learning matter right now.
Relevance is not the same as structural readiness. And that takes us to the third contention and my central fear: the risk of undermining the foundational structure itself. Basic grammar points, like the simple conjugation of the simple present tense, risk being totally overshadowed when learners have to juggle scenarios covering seasonal clothes, electronics, online shopping, and bargaining. The sheer volume of vocabulary in complex contexts just distracts from drilling the basic grammar rules. I worry specifically about things like auxiliary verbs. If a learner is overwhelmed trying to remember exchange versus return, how much mental bandwidth is left to make sure they're using "do you have" correctly instead of just "you have"? The core scaffolding is weakened when they're also trying to master polite complaints like "this shirt has a hole." These things require higher-level language that the A1, A2 curriculum tries to shortcut. and that shortcut risks long-term structural integrity.
That's a compelling argument, and I do acknowledge the tension between speed and depth. I do. However, I believe you are overestimating the structural damage here. The curriculum explicitly provides structure to prevent that weakening. It uses these dialogues to make sure politeness markers, please, thank you, excuse me, are drilled right alongside the simple, direct structures. By training the learner to say, the toy is broken, can I return it? Using basic A1 grammar, we ensure that even when they're dealing with a high-stakes complaint, the interaction stays functional and appropriate at their level. By keeping the grammatical demands low, but the contextual demands high, the curriculum forces the learner to apply limited structures across a wide array of functions. And that, paradoxically, leads to deeper structural automatization, faster than if they were just stuck in simple, low-stakes scenarios.
But mastery of simple forms is achieved through intensive repetition in low-stress environments. If we rush to cover the semantics of warranty and the sociolinguistics of asking for a discount, we might sacrifice the thorough, error-free mastery of simple concepts like plural nouns. I see the potential for real instability. Creating a speaker who knows the word refund but misplaces every simple adjective, saying shirt blue instead of blue shirt. That lack of foundational accuracy makes true B1 progression very difficult, because correcting those fossilized errors later is much harder than building correct habits now.
I would argue that a speaker who can immediately communicate their practical needs, like asking for a gift wrap or finding their size, even with imperfect grammar, is a more motivated and ultimately more successful B1 speaker than one who has perfect command of the simple present but can only talk about vegetables. This curriculum prioritizes the learner's immediate, practical need for communication, which directly supports their motivation to get to that level-up goal. Functional success drives structural improvement.
And I maintain that utility, while critical, shouldn't be achieved by creating an unstable linguistic base. Mastery of simple structures in low-stakes scenarios has to precede tackling high-stakes situations. Structural integrity must come first for long-term fluency.
So, to reaffirm my position, for a rapid transition to B1 functional fluency, this early exposure to real-world complexity is a smart pedagogical choice. It prioritizes the learner's communicative needs and accelerates that A1, A2 to B1 transition over a strict and frankly slow adherence to rigid grammatical sequencing.
And I'll reiterate that while utility is essential, diluting the focus of A1, A2 foundational mastery with a complex B1 functional load creates a precarious base. We have to ensure mastery of the core building blocks first. The structural base must be solid.
I think both of our perspectives really highlight the inherent tension in designing any curriculum that has to bridge that gap between rudimentary knowledge and practical functional fluency. It leaves the listener to weigh the value of utility against that of foundational stability.
It really is a central challenge, isn't it, for any curriculum designer trying to get learners to that point of B1 independence.
Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe, turn on the notification bell, like, and leave a comment to support the channel.